World Cup players carry muscle, single-digit body fat, and elite cardiovascular capacity simultaneously. That combination doesn't come from the gym routine most men follow. 4 pillars produce that physical result. All 4 are applicable to men between 40 and 65. Here's what they are and how they work.
Pillar 1. Explosive strength, not just maximum strength. World Cup players don't train to lift the heaviest weight possible. They train to produce maximum force in minimum time. Watch any World Cup player in a gym session. The movement is fast on the way up, controlled on the way down. The intent is always velocity. That distinction changes everything about how the muscle responds. The technical term is rate of force development. It's the speed at which the nervous system recruits muscle fibers under load. World Cup players train this quality deliberately because speed of force production determines which fibers get recruited and how many. Slow, controlled, concentric movement recruits the fibers available at that speed. Explosive intent, maximum velocity on the way up, recruits type 2 fibers, the high threshold fibers, the ones with the greatest diameter and the greatest hypertrophy potential, the ones responsible for the lean, dense muscle that World Cup players carry into every tournament. Same weight, different intent, different fibers activated. For men over 40, this isn't about jumping or chasing athletic movements that stress joints beyond their tolerance. It's about introducing explosive intent into movements already in the program. Goblet squat, controlled 3-second descent, explosive drive on the way up. Dumbbell row, controlled lowering, maximum speed pull. Shoulder press, deliberate eccentric, maximum velocity on the press. The load slows the bar. The nervous system doesn't know that. It fires as if the movement is fast. That firing pattern recruits more type 2 fibers per set than slow, controlled movement at the same load. More hypertrophic stimulus, no additional weight, no additional joint stress. World Cup players aren't bigger than the average gym-trained man because they lift more. They're built differently because they recruit differently. The intent behind the movement is the variable most men in the gym never train. The second pillar explains how World Cup players maintain single-digit body fat through an entire tournament season without the aggressive dieting that destroys muscle in men over 40.
Pillar 2. Body composition through cardiovascular zones. World Cup players don't stay lean by eating less. They stay lean because their training system creates a metabolic environment that burns fat continuously, while preserving every gram of muscle built during the season. The central mechanism is Zone 2. Moderate intensity, heart rate between 60 and 70% of maximum, sustained for 30 to 45 minutes. World Cup players log multiple Zone 2 sessions per week, not as punishment, not as cardio filler, but as a deliberate metabolic tool. Here's why it works. In Zone 2, the primary fuel source is fat, not muscle glycogen. The body oxidizes stored fat directly without triggering the cortisol response that higher intensities produce. That cortisol response is exactly what aggressive cutting and high-intensity cardio generate in men over 40, an environment that burns fat and muscle simultaneously. World Cup players avoid that environment during the season. Zone 2 keeps them lean without the hormonal cost. The adaptation that makes this powerful long-term is mitochondrial density. Zone 2 training increases the number of mitochondria inside each muscle fiber. More mitochondria means the muscle oxidizes fat more efficiently, not just during the session, but in the 48 hours after. World Cup players who train Zone 2 consistently are burning fat while sitting in a team meeting, while sleeping, while recovering. The application for men between 40 and 65 is direct. 2 to 3 Zone 2 sessions per week, 30 to 40 minutes. Stationary bike, incline treadmill walk, or elliptical. Added to the strength program, not replacing it. That combination replicates the metabolic environment World Cup players maintain across an entire competitive season. Without a nutritionist, without a chef, without cutting calories below the threshold that destroys the muscle the strength sessions are building. Most men over 40 have been choosing between being lean and being muscular, as if the two required different programs. World Cup players run both simultaneously. The system is the reason, and the system is available to any man willing to add Zone 2 to what he's already doing. The third pillar is the one World Cup players invest in daily that most gym-trained men have never taken seriously, and it's the one that makes the physical result visible even before the fat comes off. Want a strong and healthy body? Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, click the subscribe button. Pillar 3. Active mobility as training, not stretching. World Cup players spend 20 to 30 minutes per session on mobility work, not static stretching, not foam rolling as a warm-up ritual. Active mobility, controlled movement through maximum range with simultaneous muscle recruitment. Hip 90-90 transitions, world's greatest stretch, thoracic rotation under load, shoulder mobilization with resistance. These aren't recovery exercises, they're movement pattern training that determines the quality of every compound movement that follows. Watch a World Cup player move on the field. The hip extension on a sprint, the thoracic rotation on a shot, the shoulder position during a throw-in. Every movement is full range, coordinated, and powerful. That's not genetics. That's thousands of hours of active mobility work producing movement quality that the gym-trained man who only stretches after training never develops. Here's where it directly impacts the visible physique of a man between 40 and 65. Posture is the first visual signal of an athletic body. A man with real muscle mass but forward head position, rounded shoulders, and anterior pelvic tilt looks less athletic than his actual development warrants. The musculature is compressed visually. The chest doesn't open, the shoulders don't sit back, the abdomen projects forward even at low body fat percentage. World Cup players don't have that posture problem because active mobility work corrects it structurally, not temporarily, not through conscious effort, but through actual tissue adaptation over weeks and months. 10 minutes of active mobility before every training session, 5 days per week. In 8 to 12 weeks, postural change is measurable. The physique that was already there starts expressing itself differently because the structure holding it is no longer compressing it. World Cup players look the way they do partly because of what they built, partly because of how they carry it. The fourth pillar is what separates the World Cup player's physique at 34 from the gym-trained man's physique at the same age, and it has nothing to do with what happens during training. Pillar 4. Structured recovery as part of the program. Recovery isn't what happens when training stops. It's a structured set of inputs, sleep, nutrition timing, movement between sessions, load management that determines whether the training stimulus from Monday becomes muscle by Thursday or becomes fatigue that compromises Thursday's session. World Cup players at elite tournaments follow non-negotiable recovery protocols, 7 to 9 hours of sleep at fixed times, because 70% of daily growth hormone secretion happens in the first deep sleep cycle anchored to consistent sleep timing. Protein distributed across 4 to 5 daily windows of 30 to 40 grams because muscle protein synthesis has a ceiling per meal, and concentration in 1 or 2 large meals wastes the anabolic signal the training just produced. Light mobility sessions on recovery days because blood flow to recovering tissue accelerates repair and complete rest slows it. Plan deload weeks every 3 to 4 weeks because supercompensation requires the training stress to be removed periodically for the adaptation to consolidate. None of that is complicated. All of it is consistently ignored by men who treat recovery as the absence of training rather than its training itself. Here's the uncomfortable comparison. A World Cup player at 32 and a gym-trained man at 45 can follow identical strength and cardiovascular programs for 12 weeks. The player arrives at week 12 with more visible muscle and lower body fat, not because of genetics, not because of youth, but because the recovery system running between sessions was structured and consistent, while the gym-trained man's was improvised and inconsistent. The training created the same stimulus. The recovery determined what the body did with it.
For men between 40 and 65, recovery isn't a nice addition to the program. It's the rate-limiting variable. The muscle doesn't grow in the gym. It grows in the 48 to 72 hours after, during sleep, during protein synthesis, during the quiet biological processes that the gym session set in motion. What did you think of this video? Drop your honest opinion in the comments. I actually read everything. Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, click the subscribe button.